we were having a bit of a behind the scenes going back into like, okay, we've met each other while you were a speaker at A-Fest. This was a Mind Valley event, and you were a published author at Mind Valley. And it's very interesting because that was a time where I worked at Mind Valley. I worked on launching your Flowdreaming product at Mind Valley.
Yeah.
You might not even remember this, but since back when I was at Mind Valley and the times that you spoke, I might have been the guy who put the microphone on you and played your walk-in music because I was just a volunteer at that time.
My God.
And so I find
That's
it so
crazy.
fascinating because we were both talking on how we worked in the corporate world. You worked at Hay House. You worked with the Wayne Dyers, the Louise Hay, the Marianne Williamson, all the top authors. And you were able to break out of your own nest and build your own platform. But I wanted to speak right from the start on how were you able to break away from the identity that was formed within the corporate world and going into your own identity as someone who's a thought leader today?
Well, first of all, I had a major collapse, to be perfectly honest. When you have built like you said, built an identity around, this is my function. I was a director, which was kind of equivalent to a VP of an area of this multinational company. And I felt really strong about my job and my position and what I was creating and giving the world. I mean, I felt great about it. And so when I left, and I didn't leave by choice, by the way. I am able to admit that now. There was a house cleaning that happened at Hay House back in those days, and quite a few of the top level was taken out. But I never thought it would be me because I was performing so well. Everything was just going so great. So a bunch of beliefs got dismantled in me in the space of like a weekend. Belief that if you do really well, that's all it takes. If you work hard, you will be, receiving your just rewards for it. I had to have a complete different reckoning with the universe at that point. Like, wait a second, why do you just smack some people in the side of the head and dump them on the curb for seemingly no reason? Hey, this is not what I signed. It's not what I bargained for. That was my first big change of being inside myself, where I recognized that I was making bargains with the universe that were strictly one-sided. And, my first encounter with a limiting belief, honestly, which told me that if I did this, I would get that. Very transactional in nature. Now I'm sitting on the side of the curb and I'm thinking, what do I do? And I realized that everything again has happened, of course, exactly as it should, in perfectly divine timing. I know you always hear people say that. But I had been podcasting already for a number of years at Hay House. I had written a couple of books for them. My side hustle of Flowdreaming was just something that I would do after I got home from, a full corporate workday, took care of my two little kids, toddlers and grade schoolers at the time. And then I would ship out boxes of CDs. We're talking a while ago, right? This was when I said, you have to embrace this now. And when you have to embrace your own message, and yet you've been surrounded by all these really high flyers, people call it imposter syndrome. I don't think I had imposter syndrome as much as I had a deep fear of, do they really want this? Is this really of value? I mean, they've got Wayne over here and they've got Louise over there. What am I adding to this conversation? And that's what I started to finally develop that new identity. What I'm adding is my own voice. What I'm adding is a technique that works for people that isn't really present out there. And gradually, step by step, I began to rebuild the Summer McStravick Flowdreaming, queen of manifesting persona, as opposed to Summer McStravick, the person who produces all that great content and works with all the best people in the world. But it was a collapse for about 2 or 3 years, where I had to move through so many emotional points in myself until I kind of emerged. And frankly, working with people was a big part of that emergence for me. Every single client, every single session, every single person I talked to who said this works for me was a drop in the bucket of keep going, just keep going. So I don't know if you had a similar experience.
I'm laughing. I'm like, oh, I'm not alone.
No.
Hey, that's so scary similar to what I actually went through. Because obviously, I spent a lot of time at Mind Valley. slight pivot, maybe more into personal growth, and a little less spiritual, but still in the same niche. And yeah, I was the guy launching $1 million product launches. I was managing all the top authors, running events like A-Fest, and then I was doing this little side project, which was selling with love. And yeah, then I kind of, when I left, COVID hit, and they realized like there wasn't really a role that was left for me there, because I was kind of a pirate in the Navy, and they needed to structure the Navy, not have more pirates. So yeah, 2020.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, 2020 came, and they had to really go in that direction. I didn't see myself there neither. And yeah, then writing my book, figuring things out, and it took some time, and I had to figure things out. And I would say there was a lot of advantages came from the network and the connections that I had at Mind Valley. But there was also, I like what you mentioned, which is not like the imposter syndrome, but like, who am I? And I know there's existing people that are doing similar things. So like, who am I to go out and do that? And it's almost like you know so much about the industry, it makes you triple doubt everything you want to start going towards. So it's almost like, you know how they say like ignorance is bliss? I'm sometimes wondering if ignorance allows you to actually get started when you don't know all those little details that can feel a little overwhelming. So I'd be curious to know, when you started going on your own, you don't have the big engine of Hay House. What were some of the things that you were like, oh my God, I need to start thinking of this and doing that, and I didn't think about this, but I know how hard it's going to be?
Yeah. Oh God. I don't know why we didn't talk earlier.
Right? I'm just like, hey, hold on here.
So many parallels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing I recognized eventually is that I was an entrepreneur. You call it a pirate, right? There's the entrepreneur and the intrapreneur. The intrapreneur is the person in the company who is pushing the boundaries, laying out new ground, building out new systems. I could thrive in that atmosphere. But when things shift and they're like, you don't need to build out anything now. You just need to manage. You just need to do this or that, and people like us, we start to just slowly lose our minds. So I recognize that. And I also recognize that Hay House had been giving me a lot of external validation, right? Pure and simple. Yep. I had to go find the internal validation now. And for me, that meant going from a place where I was handed this $1 million budget and, I could do anything I wanted, made it a lot easier and the top talent. And I had to figure out, all right, now I have no budget. I only have me. What I can scrape. I didn't raise money. I didn't raise capital or do any of that. I said, you know what? I want to see if I can do the same thing for myself with my own stuff that I did for them, without the resources, without the external validation, without any of it. So it became for me a kind of a challenge inside myself. How do I build something, I can't say just as big because obviously, but big, worthwhile, that gets my message out. That was my goal. By my own bootstraps. And so that became sort of a fire in my belly to do that. And I don't know what you said. What was your question?
Well, we're going in the right direction.
What did I need to do that? Or...
Well, let me say this, because you touched on how you were dealing with these like $1 million budgets, and I got to share this one story that relates to that. Is we've done product launches. The formula. The return on investment. Oh. It's very different to go say, all right, I'm about to go spend $10,000 of my money,
my own
on
money,
ads. Then going and doing a product launch, and I'm spending the company's money, and I'll spend $100,000, $1 million.
Yeah.
The psychological difference is massive. And, there's a part of me that's like, hey, I can know all the steps and I've done this, but there's an emotional journey and a psychological journey that's so different as an entrepreneur. And that's what we were touching on.
Exactly. That reminded me. So as an entrepreneur, we have to get through those layers in our thinking. And it's not just thought, it's layers in your emotional ability to do the thing. And like I always joke, making 100,000 is your first level. You hit that, you're like, okay, what I say is hitting and resonating and working. Then you make 500,000 and something changes, and you have to all the systems that brought you to 100,000 don't work. And you have to drop everything and change it. And you got to hire staff now. And you don't want to have staff because you like being a solo, player. And then you get up to 1 million, and then everything breaks again. And because the structures and the levels change, I guess, every time you reach something. So, there was a year I remember saying to myself, look, I lost 60,000 one year. on just stupid stuff that I thought that would work that didn't. And that's something that, as an entrepreneur, you choke on, but I have a name for it. I call it burn money and burn time. And I know that every corporation has the same or similar thing. There's a certain amount of their budget that they know they're going to spend unwisely. They're going to hire, a bad person. It's going to be a waste of training. It's burn time and burn money. If I can't have that same slosh in my budget, in my thinking, it's not just my budget, it's in my thinking, then I will never do anything. I will not try anything because I'll be asking the universe, give me a guarantee before I do that. The universe will never do that for you, ever. It will tell you, go ahead, put that money there. Let's see what happens. Because if it doesn't work out, you know what you're going to learn? You're going to learn how to replace that money. You're going to learn that money is something that just comes and goes, and you make it and you spend it and you take it in and you take it out. And that's what we're really trying to show you. And then you get to choose if you want to, the big thing for a while in our industry was scale. And I bought into that too for a number of years. And then I realized come COVID, I don't want to scale. I don't like having a huge staff. I've had staffs, and every time I do, my life just feels heavier. The only people I want to be responsible for are my clients and the people I'm working with to help. Those are the people who I want to have all my attention. And when I had a big staff, now my staff was getting all my attention. My clients, not as much. So for the scale mentality, I was sacrificing my gift. So, these are all just things that I've kind of road bumps, I guess, that I've kind of worked through as I've reached those new levels or those new layers, or like you said, wasting that 60K or whatever it may be.
That's so rich what you're sharing right now, because, I've been part of that. Like, you need to be impacting millions and billions of people. If not, you're an insignificant loser. Like that was my mindset, right? Yeah. And I've seen it so much where it's like you're scaling just for the sake of scale. And, I love the fact that you're a 7-figure business owner, and like you've went down that path. And I know a lot of people that have went with like hiring a bunch of staff, going down that path. And there's a moment that you kind of find what your right size is. And I'd be just curious on like, how did you get to a point to identify a bit of like, this is my contribution. This is the piece that I'm going to do extremely well. And you were like, I find comfort, because sometimes you can get intoxicated just feeling like you never reach a goal.
I know. And there's always going to be one person ahead of you, or 10 or 100. I mean, and so that's part of the recognition that, okay, so to find your fit, I had some really propitious things happen right at the start of COVID. It was December 2019, and I said, you know what? I am done with my office. I don't want to have it. Everybody's remote. Go. I canceled the lease 3 months before COVID. Otherwise, I would have been paying for empty space, just listening. And then after that, my employees went here and there, and I'm like, let's go freelance instead. Let's do this. And one by one, I just kind of let the natural forces of attrition and or reshuffling come into place. And I realized, what I need is copious amounts of time for developing bigger projects. And again, in the coaching world and the personal growth world, for a long time, it was, what's your next offer? What's your next offer? What's your next offer? And because you're paying bills, you're paying your staff, you're paying, and it becomes this cycle of churning through your best teachings. And I said, I don't want to be a churner anymore. I want to be a laster. I want to write those books that, stay there perpetually. How do I structure my life and my workday so that I even have the ability to do that? So I began opening these longer periods of time for myself. I call it, as a name, I nicknamed it during COVID, I call it slow time. Slow time versus the normal time. Normal speed time is answer emails, get all the stuff done, check in with projects, blah, 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 blah. Slow time is you sit there in front of your computer for a while and you say, well, I made sure that this entire week I have nothing planned. That means that this book that's noodling around is going to start talking to me. And it's not going to start talking fast. It's going to talk slow. It's going to talk in dribs and drabs. There'll be some huge spurts of it. One day I'll write for 8 hours. but I have to slow all my being down to be able to bring in those bigger, what I think of now as sort of pivoting visions, as opposed to just climbing through what's the next need I can fill. But for me, it's almost like a decades long shift in the making, because I've been doing this now for 20 years. And I came to this realization that I have so much content now. I have so much that I've put out over 2 decades. Where is it going to go? Like, what legacy am I going to end up giving to this world? So I shifted from rampant content creation, which for me was my 30s and my 40s. And now that I'm in my 50s, 50s, I'm thinking, when am I going to cut back? When do I want to retire? In how many years? A couple of years? Do I want to have the option to? Or are there still things that want to come out? So my vision has really been shifting over the last couple of years. And it changes the way that I do just about everything, including, like you said, the size and the scope of what I want to hold around me. I believe hugely in the concept of capacity, but I think it's often overused. And people take it to mean I will work myself to the bone because I have all that capacity. Meanwhile, their health is slowly crumbling inside, and they're sniffling in bed at night thinking, I have no clients, right? And they're caught in this loop, and I don't think you need to be. I have always rested in this, support, universal support. But that's what I teach, right? Universal support, being in flow, that I'm getting what I need when I need it, no matter what it looks like. So whatever I'm facing, I'm like, why do I have this now? And if it's a big slow period, why do I have this now? What should I be putting in this? Because the things I thought were going to be on my work schedule aren't happening. So what is actually being asked of me? And that's where your book will come up, or your new card deck idea will come up, or your new desire to lecture, or even just flat out go into a different area than you've been teaching or doing. I'm going to pause for a second and let you talk.
No, before I talk, I'm just sitting and I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel well about that. Like, I really like the vibe that you're coming across, because I think that's a refreshing thing in a world that's just really hyper active, hyper action oriented, hyper do more, be more. And you need more followers, you need more subscribers, you need more, and it's never enough. And
it's endless. It's a churn. And this world right now will suck every living piece out of you to feed the big content machine that we are going into. It makes sense, though, because if we think about the era that we're in, we had the age of industrialization, the Enlightenment, all the different eras. We are literally in the age of communication. That's everything. Since the internet opened it up, now we're going into AI. It's all just more and more communication. And we're all starting to feel like we're shouting in the wind because there's so much communication. How can you be heard in this? But we have a choice. We can let it drain us dry, or we can pull back a little bit, focus on what's important to us. Which pieces do we really treasure? But that's a cultural, civilization level shift, and an individual shift. I know I'm getting philosophical here. But I can be sucked into, how come I haven't posted on Instagram in 6 months? That's ruining my business. And then I think, you know why? Because I'm actually working with some really great people who are breaking through right now. And that's absorbing my emotional, energetic attention. That's what I'm here for. But we have to get to that point of strength in ourselves to be able to clarify like that. Every single one of us, not just we content teachers.
Yeah. Now, the reason I'm so like out of words right now is I think I went through some moment like that last year. And, I was like, okay, I need to be an author. I need to get influencers. Then I was like hiring this guy to do some short reel strategy on Instagram because I need more followers. And I hated it, but I thought I needed to do it. Then I was creating this membership and I was trying to serve the clients, and I was like, I'm not excited about this. What's going on? Then I was like, I need a high ticket program. And then I did it, and I did some great results for the clients that bought it. But I was like, this is not bringing fire to me. And and I was looking at my business, and I was like burning through a lot of money. I had a bit too many staff. And it was only once I went on a trip. And it's so funny. I went on a trip to step away from the grind. I even played a lot of video games during that time. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
suddenly, like, speaking engagement come, amazing client of a completely different caliber that worked on skill sets I hadn't flexed in so long that made me so much happier to work on. And I completely reinvented my business where now I'm getting contracts that are of a completely different nature than what I was building before. But I was so into the, I need to keep the wheels turning and this kind of like fight and flight stress mode that you speak about, this slow time. And it was a whole lot of anxiety to go into the slow time. There was guilt going into the slow time. And I feel like there was a magic that brought the right things to me. But you seem to have had this. I'm witnessing this. Is there something that makes it so that these things happen to only certain people? Because like we're here to tell the tale, but like maybe this could have been a completely different direction where I would have just squashed everything and lost everything. And philosophically, I'm trying to reconcile that.
Jason, it's in the water. It's in the water.
Fluoride, got it.
It's like, it's the fluoride. It's the fluoride. Dr.
Got
Strangelove.
it. Got it.
No, I just think a lot of us are because we're getting pushed to the extreme in communication, the deluge. I mean, the choices we have to watch television at night are compared to when I grew up when there were 4 channels and you couldn't record anything, right? We are having to parse this in ourselves, which means in a lot of cases, rejecting 90% now of what's coming to us and coming at us. Meaning we've been trying to press ourselves to fit the 90%, the 100%, and we say, no, I can't. Not going to do that. And the fear I think you're talking about, like especially as us as entrepreneurs, people with our own businesses, we want to make, just say it flat out, a certain amount of money. I have to, right? I've got 2 kids and a husband and a house and a dog and a cat, and I need to make a certain amount. But beyond that certain amount, we're examining the drives that come to us. The hustle is to reach that certain amount, right? To cover it. Because if we don't, we have no sense of inner safety. And not only that, but the gifts that we're really, really good at are not going to be utilized because we're going to end up working for somebody else, going into a different field. Sure, you know, I could go back and become an art director again, or maybe an editor. I've got a bunch of other skills that I've moved through over my life, but they wouldn't be the greatest skills that I have to give. So my goal is to create that enough safety around me that then I get to really embody and enhance what I consider my most sacred or my most, the biggest skills that I've been gifted with, and I get to pursue them and I get to enhance them. Now, when I'm doing it, it's kind of really selfish because it's me discovering, well, how good of a coach can I be? Like, how much can I change people? How much can I bring them in the flow? How can I, make this teaching so crystal clear? But it's also making the biggest impact in the world because of my focus on that. So what I'm doing for me ends up being what I'm doing for others to a much higher degree than if I was just sitting and, laying a book cover design out. So that for me is sort of the guidance as to how big do I need to grow. I don't think that was quite your question, but the giving myself the time and the space to reach it. Yeah. Giving yourself the time and the space to reach it, I think only happens once you've achieved your basic security level. Mm-hmm. And the danger to watch out for is we tend to keep increasing that level. A lot of us have a kind of emotional lack thinking around our income. I see it all the time with my own clients. I'm like, you're making $100,000 now. How do you feel? Great, but it's not enough. In fact, I'm in debt. I'm like, okay. Now you're making $150,000. How do you feel? Well, I'm feeling better, but I just had to spend all this, and and now I had to get these employees, and okay, you're making $300,000. How do you feel? It's like the horizon will move forever. And eventually we stop and say, why do you persist in putting yourself in this energetic, emotional, monetary lack? Why do you do it? And it turns out often that we've learned that lack is the only thing that we know that will guarantee us that we will make it and get it. So in essence, we're relying on a negative emotion for our success. And I say, if you don't break that cycle, you're going to be 78 years old, still hustling and it will not be enough. And you'll have millions in the bank and it will not be enough. And you'll have put yourself there because the only way you actually built was based on, I don't have enough. And that is the fire that will continually propel you until it consumes you. Said, wouldn't you rather learn how to build something not based on fear, but based on, I trust this will work. I trust that I'm good enough for this. I trust that the right people will find me. I trust that I have as much voice in this world and deservingness of a voice as literally A, B, and C, and D person around me. I have a name for this. I call it self-selecting. And I use it for myself all the time. I know that Wayne Dyer at some point, and I knew him well, chose himself to be a teacher. He said, I will be Wayne Dyer. I will impact. I will do this. And then other people started to look at him and go, we like you. But until we self-select, I will be at this level. I will be that teacher. Because what happens instead is we tend to wait for other people to recognize us first before we get that. But they're just going to go walking right on by until we self-select and say, I will be that person. So it's our choice. Who is that person that I'm going to choose to be? And to go back to, what size company am I going to grow? And on what energetic, emotional basis am I growing it? Because if you start your company that way, your company's just going to keep rolling off the edge of a cliff in that direction until you have that, come to Jesus moment, like you and I have had, where we go, no, I'm not going to grow based on that anymore. I know that was a lot of different thoughts all together, but I think they kind of go together in a way. It's a web.
I'm like, am I on the receiving end of a podcast or an intervention? Like, geez. And it's
what I do.
But Summer, like, I'm hoping for everybody else listening is also having a kind of, we call it coming to Jesus moment. But like, I'm listening to you, and that's that moment you said, like, the fuel from the lack is what motivates you. Like, I've seen that happen to me in so many categories of my life. The most fit I'll ever be is when I'm single and hating myself.
Yeah.
And the most amount of money I would typically make is when I'm in the most amount of crisis. I end up really fueling myself up to do what is necessary to make it. And I'm just like, ooh.
Yeah, you're using that.
Maybe I could use a different source of energy here.
I tell people, I say, you're like a junkie. You're like a drug addict. You're using lack and you're using fear because that's the only thing that you guarantee will get your ass, or sorry, can I say that? Get your butt into gear to make sure you succeed. You rely on it. And it's intensely scary to stop relying on that. It's intensely scary because what we realize then is I don't trust any other method. And I'm like, look, there's 1,000 other methods to get you where you want to go. And this goes right back to what you were saying, I think in the beginning. When you're ignorant, it's almost easier, right? Because you're not using, you're curious, you're wondrous. You're being led by desire, very different feelings. And that's often when things happen easier for us. Yeah, we have a tendency as we age to look back earlier in our career and say, well, that was just, I fell into that and it just worked and I had a good boss and I had all these good things, but now it's so much harder. Why do we reach that spot? What's changed? If anything, we're more expert. We're more seasoned and salted and wisdomed up than ever. We have more tools in our pocket now than we ever had in the beginning. But now those tools are dragging us down.
Damn.
Are we talking about selling it all here? We can, but I think we're talking about this metamorphosis and how we do things and how we run things, and especially ourselves.
Well, here's where the tie-in is, because I mean, it's the Selling with Love podcast, but for all my avid listeners, they know that we're talking a lot about entrepreneurship and we're talking about the blocks and the things that get in the way from us selling more and doing it from a place of love, right? And what you're talking about here is how does it look like when you're building the business out of love? And that includes sales and everything else. And what I would want to stress on is just the fact that everything you've shared so far is about how do you not fall into the lower emotions that can be effective, but are not necessarily going to have you be so much focused on the care and the love and the leading of the clients and the transformation and the mission, which is really what I advocate for. And it sounds like what you're giving right now are the most tangible ways that people need to self-select investigate, introspect to see what are we really looking to do and how are we doing it is important. And
Yeah.
quite frankly, it's a bit of a check on me because I'm like, I'm not perfect here. I mean, I teach the method, but sometimes I also need to be reminded and go back into the student seat, which is why
I
I'm
always
like,
say that child mind. And it's the
mhm.
worst place for us to go to because we like to be professional and expert and already have it figured out. And to go
Yeah.
back into, I don't know, it's like the first time you open up a really complicated computer program. You sit there for about half an hour just dreading, oh, you're going to have to learn to figure this out
Yeah.
because we don't want to go back into that child mind.
Well, I'm starting to have that now, mid 30s, and I'm seeing some new software come out, and I'm like, hey, I used to get excited learning about new software. Now I'm like, I think there was this time at Mind Valley, they brought in this new tool, which was called Airtable, and I was so resistant to it because it was like, oh, I don't want to learn something new. I want to use the tools that I like. I don't want to change that. And so the stubbornness kind of came with the times. But one thing I
Yeah.
wanted to go into, Summer, because I know, first off, everything you shared so far, I absolutely love it. Thank you for bringing up all the ways that you went on that journey to get to the place that you are now. But as much as, we might have skirted on sales, we also didn't talk specifically about flow dreaming as your craft. And one of the key
Oh, yeah.
things I wanted to make sure we cover on this conversation is you as a teacher, you've built your own product and you've refined your
Mhm.
craft. And I wanted to understand your balance between what you would do when it comes to nailing the marketing and the sale of your program versus improving your craft, because you
Mhm.
found a winning recipe for you. And I'd love to see, how did you come to that balance?
Yeah. I love selling, by the way. I absolutely love it. I didn't used to. I used to be a person who was very focused on content. Like that's my happy spot. Content creation. I could do it all day long in my sleep. Um, I love to record audios. I love to write. I love to put together webinars and teaching events and work directly with. That's my happy place. But what I realized is if I only stayed in that happy place, is that people wouldn't find me. And I fell into this understanding that some of us are natural teachers and creators. Some of us are natural with sales and outreach. And being only one and not having any of the other would strangle my ability to get all that content out into this world. Other people are predominantly sales, right? They love talking with others. They're like, I can put 100 people in my program like that. And I'm like, yeah, but what's in your program? Oh, I don't know. My staff takes care of that. So for me, the ideal is to have a balance of both, to be lovingly in both worlds and to want to be in both worlds. So now, whenever I enter a period of sales, one, I'm making sure I'm doing it because I'm super excited about the content that I've made. And I want everybody to learn about this. And I'm looking to also see, are you going to get from this what I want you to get? Because if you don't, it's like having a bad apple in the barrel. If I bring in students and I haven't very carefully selected them, then they're not going to get what they need, and their discontent will spread and seep through everything. So sales for me is a process of finding a fit. It's finding, do I have what you need, and is what I needed good enough to really impact you and affect your life? Because if it is, you'd be ridiculous not to try this out, not to test this. So to go back to flow dreaming now, my specific thing, when I started, it was really not so easy because everyone says, first of all, what's flow dreaming? So I have to educate people on this concept before I can even get to the point of, and it's going to work for you. Whereas if you are starting with something that's a known modality, I do Reiki, or I do tapping, or I do, hypnosis. It's easy. Everybody already knows that. They're like, great, I'm already interested in hypnosis. You don't have to sell me on the idea of hypnosis. I just want to know if you're the right teacher for me. So in a way, I actually introduced an extra step, which was, oh gosh, I have to educate people, and then I can tell them that they should be using it. So it's been it's been a plus and a minus because, one, I've made it harder for myself, but on the other hand, the uniqueness of this can become something that, if we think about some things that pop into our head, like the Sedona method, that's an older one, but it became its own legacy. And flow dreaming has the opportunity to do that too, as long as I'm continuing to get it out into the world. So every teacher, I think, has to decide in themselves, am I crafting and creating something that's my own unique brand and my own unique technique? Or am I going to utilize other people's existing techniques so well that I become a master in that field? So we make that first sort of initial decision. And I think it's something that a lot of younger teachers are still struggling with. Like, well, how do I bring in all these things? And I'm like, find the ones that work for you or discover your own. So as a technique itself, flow dreaming is similar to meditation. It's similar to hypnosis. It's similar to affirmations. It's none of those things and kind of all of those things. It's awareness of flow energy, and flow itself has been really popularized. It's like life hack, etc. lately. And my approach has always been very different than what usually the rest of the world talks about with flow. For me, flow is a philosophy as well as a psychological state of being. So when I'm in flow state, I am refocusing my body and reprogramming my cells, but I'm also in direct communication with all that is in spirit. I'm in the flow, the literal flow of all things. And philosophically, I will talk to people and lecture on, the sun and the universe. It's always expanding outward. There's a positive direction of complete ease. Like it's baked into every layer of nature. It's natural law. I say the earth revolves around the sun. It's not fighting its way. I'm naturally getting older. There is no resistance to my body aging except in my own brain. But if we can understand that we also have a flow or a trajectory of our own being that's completely free of resistance, that's just pure ease and alignment, what would that awareness do in your life? What could you build in that? What could you elevate or expand or grow inside that? So there's that one aspect of it. So we get into flow state, which is absurdly easy. I use guided daydreaming as a way to get in, which is just saying, open your imagination. For me, guided daydreaming is something, again, that our bodies came in with. And as something that our bodies came in with, just like, I say our tongue helps us speak, helps us taste and know good food from poison, has multiple uses. Daydreaming does the same. Daydreaming is a connective force. It brings you into that liminal space, just like before you drop off to sleep, there's that layer. And in that layer, when we go there in a daydream, it's an unconscious effort, but I teach you how to make it conscious. Like, now you're going to know you're in a daydream. It's like a lucid dream in a way at nighttime. So we go there, we feel the effect of flow space. We literally lose track of our body and how much time has passed. And I say, now this is the critical thing. Who are you in that space? What are you developing, making? Tell me the emotions that you want to feel in your life. So as an entrepreneur, this has been really important for me. In fact, product plug coming right up. I made a playlist called The Entrepreneur's Flow Book, Thriving Healthy Entrepreneur. I made 7 of these, one for each day of the week. I made one for sales. I made one for clients and customers coming out the door, literally showing up, calling me, begging me. I made one that says, I have all the money I need. It just flows in. It's just right there. I made one for resources and talent. Every single one of those was an aspect where I said, I'm going to go into flow. And here's how I'd feel totally complete in that space. So for instance, with sales, I hope I'm not going on too late, but I'll wrap this soon. With sales, I would feel like, look, I have the right people and they are here. They are reaching out. They are begging. And my job is to simply show them and to help them open their eyes. And the wrong people, they naturally just skedaddle away. I don't even have to deal with them. But they're here and they're everywhere. So I was bringing in kind of an emotional energy of completion, of achievement, of connection, hugely of connection. I've got the right stuff for you and it will change everything. So that would be, for instance, how I would work in I call it a flow dream, to create these specific emotional states around specific areas of my life. That is the basis of my teaching, but I teach it for all the different areas. And again, it's like yoga. You do the physical technique, but there's a whole philosophy behind it. But for me, it's been very reorganizational.
Well, Summer, I love that you were able to share this resource. And what I'm going to do is ensure that in the show notes, people can get a copy of what you've just shared. So definitely sell me that. I want to see what that is. Okay. Because that sounds very effective. I've seen Flowdreaming as a product. We work with it at Mind Valley. There's a question I ask all the guests when they come on the show, and I do want to ask you as well. You've touched on it a little already, but I want to hear it almost in a succinct way. What does selling with love mean to you?
Oh, yeah. I kind of have touched on it. Selling with love means not letting my small self get in the way. If I don't really share with somebody what it is that I think we could do together, then I have let my own inner fear win. I've let the small self-conscious part of myself win. So I always remind myself, you have to get over yourself, Summer. Get over yourself. And when I say that, I mean it in a sense of, why would you let your own fear of being said no to, or being unwanted, or being unseen? I'm like, that's all the crappy, icky stuff that you try to get rid of in your life all the time. So if you're in a conversation with somebody and you're sharing something, don't let that part of you win. Make it be something that you get through and conquer over and over, because only then can you give the other person you're speaking with the pride and the acknowledgement of knowing that they will make their own decision. I assume that every person I talk to is smart and they're searching. And I trust that they will make a good decision. And I acknowledge their wisdom. And I say, I have something and I'm not going to hold back. Here's what it is. And I trust and acknowledge that you're a smart cookie and you will know if it's right for you or not. And that makes, for me, selling effortless and easy and super transparent. There's no convincing that needs to be done. In fact, if I did, then I would be chipping into that low part of myself. I have to convince, because I can't let that part of myself be said no to. Do you get what I'm saying?
100%. I particularly love the way that you expand on how you have to trust the intelligence of your particular buyer. And then you just communicate with all your heart. Summer, honestly, this has been such a fun conversation, one that's been quite impactful for me. And I know for everybody listening, they're going to have a bit of things to think about. I love that we touched on finding what is our right size for our dream and what is it that we want to create, understanding that the scale for the sake of scale can actually bring some unnecessary stress, but there's a discovery that comes out of that journey to see what is the right size that you want to be in. We talked about how finding yourself in the flow and touching into flow dreaming can be a powerful tool that you can use. And I'm going to encourage everybody to go deeper into flow dreaming and discover more of Summer's material. She has her podcast. We're going to have that checklist and those audios that you can go through as an entrepreneur. And really your whole journey of going from corporate, sharing how you've had to reinvent your identity, having the voice and knowing that you have to select that you are okay to go forward. And you have just as much of a right as any other author out there to speak of what you are passionate about in your own way. And there is room for it. And just realizing also that you can't always just be fueled by unrenewable resources, maybe some of the more negative emotions. They might have worked, but if you trust that there are better energy sources out there that can make you reach those goals and not burn yourself out, is going to make you a much more powerful person on your journey of entrepreneurship. Summer, it was an absolute joy having you on the show. Thank you so much for everything you've shared. And for everybody else listening, be sure to give a try for Flow Dreaming. And as you do, don't forget to sell with love. Thank you so much for listening to the Selling with Love podcast. We have some previous episodes you can tune into right here. And if you prefer the short form content where you get to the point in under 10 minutes, we do have a ton of clips from our best episodes that are being shared on this channel as well. So pick which one supports you the most. And of course, thank you for liking, subscribing, and of course, selling with love.